Today we're going to be reacting to a video made by Clif available on the YouTube channel of the same name. This portion is clipped out of a slightly longer video. The link to the original video is in the description.
What do you call abuse? Like somebody kicking a dog? Bad. What about bullfighting, fox hunting?
Bullfighting? No, I don't agree.
All bad?
No, fucking stuff in Spain where they let
okay.
run about.
What about like badger baiting where they dig up badgers and set dogs on them?
Nah.
Oh crap.
Hunting's a different one. If you're hunting to survive, hunting to feed.
Survival's a different thing. I agree with you.
Well, thank goodness we can actually make exceptions and say it's okay for us to kill animals to eat them.
Okay, last question. What about taking animals to a slaughterhouse, putting a shackle around their leg, hanging them upside down, cutting their throat for a meat product that you don't have to eat? You can eat a plant-based version instead.
So are we assuming that animals didn't die for people to get the plant-based version of that food? Are we assuming that animals didn't die torturous, painful deaths on account of the provision of the plant-based version of that food? Can we talk about the fact that the meals that I eat now, which are basically animal-based, provide me with a complete nutritional profile, don't cause any apparent negative physical symptoms, and help me avoid experiencing mental health problems? I guess I am eating them for pleasure, but it's not taste pleasure so much. Although steak and butter are definitely tasty, they haven't always been for me. It actually took a considerable amount of time for me to become accustomed to the idea of eating red meat, the associated fat, and large amounts of butter, which I had been conditioned into thinking were all bad for me, and which I had many times avoided choosing in favor of leaner meats, fish, or no animal flesh at all. Many of the meals I eat are incredibly simplistic and boring. Sometimes I just eat plain bowls of ground beef with salt. I'm eating them for the aforementioned reasons, which are not tied to taste. But I don't think it's by accident that I've adjusted to enjoy their taste so much now. If we take a burger, for example, I think a person would be hard-pressed to excuse animal death over a cow meat burger. To stay consistent, they should also take umbrage with a plant-based burger. If eating for pleasure, especially in the unspecified way as mentioned on the poster board, is wrong, then it doesn't matter what food it is. Do we eat burgers for nutrition or for taste pleasure? Are burgers even nutritious? If they aren't, then animals were likely tortured or abused and died an early death on account of some human somewhere choosing to eat that particular food not for nutrition, but for taste pleasure. I would even go so far as to say that if the food is actually dangerous to the animal that consumes it, as burgers tend to be, then it's even worse because humans are animals too. And if we want to reduce suffering in animals, we should be concerned with feeding those animals well.
Because if you don't have to and there is no necessity,
it isn't necessary.
Then it's pleasure. Do you understand?
I definitely understand. Sometimes I want to eat a taco bowl. Sometimes I even try to convince myself that the digestive issues that are sure to come are worth it, and that I should just do it because it's what I want. But then, perhaps I put my vegan thinking cap on, and I remind myself that there is no nutrition in lettuce. There's shit for nutrition in tomatoes. And so long as I'm eating the beef and the dairy, I don't necessarily need any fat from the avocado either. So I understand that I'm going to go to a grocery store and buy products that I paid people to kill animals in order for me to have just for the taste pleasure. I also understand that the inclusion of veg is just going to cause me pain and therefore should be avoided because the purpose is the reduction of animal suffering. So in the end, I wind up with a meal that doesn't taste as good as it would have if I'd used all the ingredients I wanted, but one that at least covers the spectrum of nutrition that I require, provides me with enough fuel, and sees me decrease my contribution to animal harm and the environment by not eating unnecessary things along with it.
Yeah. I'm not trying to catch you out, I'm just trying to make you think.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I do think it is abuse to hang animals up.
Of course it is.
Gas them,
that's alright.
Whatever else to do to them.
Like. Man, I've been to all slaughterhouses and watched the whole process start to finish. Not just slaughterhouses, farms as well. I'm an animal rights activist.
Right, nice one.
And what happens to animals, man?
Right.
Do you know how we kill pigs in this country?
No.
Would you be surprised if I told you we throw them in the gas chambers?
The gas pigs?
The gas.
What about halal? What about the halal meat? All that stuff.
I've seen it both.
Right.
Both are terrible. What we do and what halal do. The animals are terrified. They both get stabbed in the throat. The difference between us and what they do with halal, they turn them upside down. I think it's called a Cleveland something or other. They turn them upside down, cut their throat.
Peaceful or something, don't
Peaceful, my ass, man. It's
right.
horrible. The animals suffer terribly. What we do is we shoot cows in the head with a captive bolt. It's not a gun. It springs into their head. The lines are moving so fast that oftentimes they miss the brain. So I'll knock the cow off their feet. It's like a boxer punching you in the head. I'll put them off their feet. 40% of cows, fat, go into the slaughter line are fully conscious. hung upside down with their back leg. Somebody sticks a knife in their throat and cuts their throat. While they're bleeding out, they'll go around and cut their leg. The knives they have are super fucking sharp. They cut their legs off, and then they put the knife in their back and they pull it down from the back of their tail right down to the bottom of their spine, and then they pull their skin off.
Ah, fuck.
40% of them fully conscious while they do it.
Jesus Christ.
Fucking brutal. So we're throwing pigs in gas chambers, we're shooting cows in the head and cutting their throat. Man, it's fucking terrible.
It is.
And all when you can go into any KFC or McDonald's or Burger King or Euro or Starbucks and buy a vegan option instead.
It's interesting that he mentions these fast food corporations, especially mentioning Starbucks. I recently watched a video where I was supposed to look at some data that showed the negative environmental impact of animal products, among other things, and feel like I should stop consuming animal products specifically on account of it. Unfortunately, for the people trying to manipulate me, I already recognize that animal products are far too nutritious, and that exceptions ought to be made for foods that are actually nutritious. Now, very high on the list was coffee. Protecting the environment means protecting animals. Is it worth it for there to be environmental destruction on account of people having coffee? What is the need for coffee? What is the need for a company like Starbucks? Why support a company like Starbucks whose main product is coffee? Why, if we want to reduce animal suffering, would we even bother to promote a company like Starbucks? Why, if we're trying to reduce animal suffering, would we recommend any fast food place or recommend a plant-based alternative to junk food? The main product of these places is usually something with meat: Subway and deli meat, Burger King and hamburger patties, KFC and chicken. I mean, Clif is well within his right to do whatever he wants. He can do his activism however he wants. If he understands that he can convince people by telling them that they can still have their vices, I guess he can promote behavior that you have to jump through hoops to be able to label vegan within any stretch of the imagination. Am I supposed to lower my standards of what veganism can look like, or?
Yeah, the Burger King.
Yeah, but you Burger King do.
I think when we ordered it, it actually said you can have the burger we ordered, vegan version.
Yeah.
So
Have you ever tried it?
I haven't, no.
And I'm not judging you, by the way, because I used to pay for it too. I just know information now that I did not have before.
Do you somehow still not have the information that eating junk food is basically the least vegan thing that you can do? Do you still somehow not have the information that says that maybe we shouldn't be encouraging people to support corporations whose main products include junk food or completely unnecessary products that cause environmental damage? Is still supporting those corporations in terms of giving them an incentive to continue to do what they do, which is to feed into animal agriculture, which is what I thought vegans wanted to not have be the case? Okay. This is just me trying to make sense of what he's saying as a person who no longer eats junk food, especially, but also as someone who doesn't like seeing people motivate or encourage people to do things that are actually antithetical to the cause that they're trying to promote.
They actually are.
And I'm not going to tell you all vegan food is nicer, because it's preference, really. It's like meat products. Some you like, some you don't. Yeah. Some vegan products you like, some you don't. You find the ones you like, and those are the ones you eat. And like, you can go anywhere and eat a vegan option now. And people think, oh, weirdo vegans. I am vegan because I would never hurt an animal. And I'm certainly not going to pay somebody else to harm an animal when I don't need to, when I can just eat a vegan burger instead.
That's the thing, isn't it? We're paying for it in a way.
Supply and demand. Supply and demand. Listen, if you pay somebody to shoot your sister or your mum or your dad or a friend, you're as complicit as the person that pulls the trigger.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it. So I would never harm an animal. Yeah. I would never hurt a dog or any animal for that matter. So why am I paying people, or why would I be paying people to do things to them I would never do myself?
The thing is, you're never going to get everyone to stop.
You're not. You're not. Number one, there's a hell of a lot of people eating animals. Yeah. But number two, I can talk to some people, and so if you get it and you understand it, you can take personal responsibility. So for me, the right thing to do is, if you see an injustice and you think something's wrong, is to abstain from it. That's the least you can do, is abstain.
Vegetables used to be the main star of my meal. To have balanced meals, I would consume rice, pasta, noodles, grains, etc. But now, I understand that all they were doing was causing me pain, causing me discomfort, causing me to have a lower standard and quality of life. All the while, I was paying people to kill animals in order for me to have them on my plate. Not just one meal, vegetables especially were part of every meal. And so, imagine how much blood I had on my hands, eating some roughage I never needed to eat in the first place, enjoying it all the while because of taste pleasure, and convincing myself that the pain and discomfort must just be me. It must just be my body, because I believed that those materials we consider food were so good for us. So why would they be the cause of those problems? All the while believing I was getting enough nutrition while I was experiencing health issues that went beyond digestive issues on account of trying to maintain such a nutritionally inferior diet compared to the one that I have now. Understanding now just how different things could be for me, just how much less I could consume, just how much better I could feel, just how much less of an impact I could have by not being a perfect little consumer, by buying mostly what I need and only occasionally what I want.
If you care for animals, you don't want them to be hurt unnecessarily, and again, survival is a totally different thing. If you had to eat an animal to survive, it's not even a conversation. People do what they need to do to survive.
Again, thank fuck for that.
If you go to McDonald's and buy a £1.19 McPlant instead of the normal burger, and apparently it tastes pretty much the same, even if it doesn't, even if it's 10% different, 10% difference for an animal to be hung upside down, have their throat cut, you know? Does that make sense?
He's still going on and on about the taste pleasure. I don't think it's necessarily worth it for animals to die for people to have a fast food burger. I don't think it's worth it for animals to die for people to have even the meat substitute on its own. But I 100% understand that it is worth it for an animal to die to have an actual meat patty formed from the flesh of that animal.
Because I honestly believe 90% of people love animals and would never hurt an animal themselves. Okay, you get psychopaths. There's people working in slaughterhouses that enjoy stuff like that, or they're disconnected. I don't know what the hell's wrong with them.
Clif stands there talking about how he can't understand how there are real people on the planet who, for the sake of providing people on the planet with complete, full, real human nutrition, he can't understand how there could be people who would do that, while at the same time eating plants that were more than likely grown with the use of pesticides, which cause exorbitant suffering in animals, including animal death, and with even more direct killing methods such as crop protection, as seen in the clips before. When you watch those videos, those people do seem to get some kind of sense of satisfaction out of it. They seem very proud of the job that they do. They're very good at the job that they do. And it's through them doing that we can get those plants, basically. At the end of the day, I've determined, at least for myself, that I don't need those crops. But if you want them, or if you have determined for yourself that you need them, then you're doing the exact same thing. He mentioned before that there were things he didn't know. Veganism has opened my eyes to so many things too. Perhaps before watching vegan street activism, I didn't know what kind of heinous things could possibly be part of the agricultural process from farm to table. But it was only through vegan activism, and then also people speaking out against vegan activists and meeting them on an equal playing field, that I then had to ask myself, wait, what problems are actually being resolved through vegan activism? Clif mentioned personal responsibility. What is it that I can do as an individual? What is it that I'm responsible for as an individual? If I were a vegan, or else I should say eating the way that I'm expected to as a vegan, I would be eating products that inevitably lead to more animal deaths. I would be eating more, which would lead to more animal deaths. I would purposely be causing harm to myself. I would perhaps be sick enough that I would need to be dependent on the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry in order to abate the symptoms. And in that case, I would be a burden on society. I would be doing much more environmental harm, and that environmental harm would not be justified through the nutritional adequacy of the diet that I'm subjecting myself to, because the diet would not be nutritionally adequate. If I were to take Clif's advice, I would feel free to go to Starbucks. I would feel free to go to Burger King or some other type of fast food restaurant and get the plant-based option, all the while completely ignoring the fact that even something like that, even if it's just a treat for myself every once in a while, is still contributing to problems and not helping resolve them. I don't necessarily think of the small things that I do here and there to treat myself as excusable. I feel ashamed at times when I can't overcome addiction. I feel ashamed at times when I cave. I don't necessarily encourage this behavior in other people, although I may mention that I understand it, or that I'm not trying to make it so that people can't engage in those behaviors if they feel so inclined. I don't want to be that way, though. I want to be more like what I've come to embody more now. And I feel that what I'm doing now, even though it's not perfect, is a vast improvement over the nonsense that I did before, not only for myself, but also for the environment and also for animals in turn.
But most people would never hurt an animal. And if you had to stick a knife in the throat of a cow yourself, would you do it?
I don't think I could do it at all.
How many people could?
Let's say that I didn't think that I could stand around in a field shooting birds to keep them from eating crops. Does that mean I shouldn't be eating crops?
So it's really, I think it's even shittier that we're paying somebody else to do it for us. It's almost really fucking weak that I don't want to do that, so I'm going to pay some other person that probably doesn't want to do it either to do it for me, you know?
If I didn't want to police a neighborhood or respond to armed robbery calls or put out fires because they are incredibly dangerous tasks that put my life at risk and are scary, does that mean I shouldn't call for help from emergency services when I need it?
Interesting.
I'm going to give you a card. What's your name, mate?
Good luck, mate. Sean.
I'll give you a card before you go.
Oh, nice one.
You want one each?
Aye, go for it, mate.
I'm going to ask you to watch something on YouTube sometime. It's not me, by the way.
I'm a big YouTube watcher.
So am I. I spend my nights on YouTube. One each. So you see the top one here, the best speech you'll ever hear?
Give that a watch.
It's a guy called Gary Yourofsky. It is literally the best speech you'll ever hear. It sounds boring. I thought I'd scrub through it. Somebody sent it to me and inside 5 minutes I was like, right, I have to go vegan now. And I'm not saying you'll do that, but I'll make you think. And honestly, it's just a guy talking in a university in America. He did a university tour and somebody filmed it on their phone. But it's very powerful.
This isn't the end of the video, but it's basically the end of the video. So we'll stop here. We'll end on this note, trying to get me to entertain Gary Yourofsky, considering the things he's said about humanity, would be like trying to convince me to entertain Richard Spencer. Except it's worse, because at least Richard Spencer doesn't mind the existence of white people. At least they would still be able to be a thing in his perfect world. I think I'm learning something else from vegans. Making clickbaity titles and having clickbaity thumbnails seems to be a really good way to grow a channel. So many ways to forsake whatever kind of moral standards you may have had leading into an encounter with a vegan. So little time. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again in another one. As always, be having a good day.